Okay, so let's start. So previously we have covered the topics. Okay, what is database management system, its applications. Then we have seen the drawbacks of the file system that was used earlier before the database management systems came into existence. We started the database management system. So to learn component by component, so how it is being divided, the various levels of abstraction in which the complete database management system is divided. So three levels: physical schema deals with how the data is stored, logical deals with what data is stored, and view level, which is interested means basically from the end user point of view, who is interested in a portion of the database and not the complete database. You can see the view levels, the various levels of the data, and view of the data in DBMS can be shown like this diagrammatically. I hope you have drawn this diagram. We learned the meanings of instance and schema. So schema is the database design in simple words, and instance is at any moment of time the current state of the database, whatever data is present there. So we have compared it with the analogy of variable also. So variable type is schema, and the variable currently holding any value in a program, that is instance. You can relate it to the database instance and schema terms. We learned the various data models. So a data model is a collection of tools. What does it actually collection of conceptual tools? Okay, which will describe for data stored the structures, the relationships, their semantic and the consistency constraints. And we have learned the models, relational model, which looks like this. Relational model consists of tables, tables consist of columns and rows, where columns represent the attributes. Need someone near your mic. So as you can see in this table, customer ID, customer name, customer street, customer city, and the account number. These are 5 attributes, okay, corresponding to the 5 columns, and each row is known as a record, or what we call it as a tuple, T-U-P-L-E, okay, so tuple or record. So each record must be described by the 5 attributes. That is what we call as the schema. And this data, after filling up, what we are seeing here, or what we can see here, this table with the present information is the instance of that database. So relational model basically uses the tables and the relationship tables also. The entity tables plus the relationship tables. And we are going to focus on this model only in all your chapters or the complete syllabus. Then we have learned also the other model, entity relationship data model, which is more based on the real world and extraction, and object-based data model, which is a combination of object-oriented plus object-relational. And then semi-structured data model, where along with the XML, more specified attributes are used inside the table. Why we are using here extensible markup language, because semi-structured data models are basically used where there is a transfer of data between the two different systems. Like if one is using Oracle and the other is using DBM, SQL suppose, then separate, there are two different database management systems tools and their languages, and hence in between we have to use some mediators or extensible markup languages helps to interpret the data structures from the other DBMS languages. Okay, so they can be easily represented in the other structure also. And the older models, network model and hierarchical model, which are nowadays not in use. The relational model looks like this. relational database. Entity relationship model, which is mainly used for database design, and ER diagrams are used to represent the overall database structure. Then we have studied the DML language, that is data manipulation language, which is used to access and manipulate the data stored in the tables or stored in your database. And one of the best examples of such language is SQL, which is also a data manipulation language, structured query language. And then the DDL, that is data definition language, which is used to design the database. Means how you are going to store the data. So the basic table design is will come under such instructions will be the part of data definition language. So data definition language basically deals with the design, structuring of the database. Okay. So these are two basic languages of database system, that is DDL and DML. Okay. DDL, data definition language, DML, data manipulation. Then in the last lecture, we have learned the various types of database users. I hope you have noted down. 4. Application programmers, sophisticated users, specialized users, niche users. Okay, so application programmers are the ones which designs the application program interfaces so that any user which is interacting directly or indirectly with the databases can perform some operations over that. Okay, so for that we need the interfaces like the websites. Okay, it could be the website also, forms also, or any software program. So that things will be designed by the application programmer. They will be responsible for writing the program. Okay, for example, the user wants some information about a particular or train booking. So he will be entering the website and he will be going to the panel of where he could register for him and do the operations by clicking on button. So there is some user interface designed for that, and such interface is designed by the application programmers. Then comes the sophisticated users. They actually design the queries which will be working over the database and will give the output. So they design the query tools and queries. They work with the query tools. Specialized users are basically sophisticated users, but they deal with a very high level programming plus very complicated type programming. Okay, they may use the CAD, and any kind of export systems and artificial neural networks and all those analogies and algorithms. They will work with more complicated data, like maybe it could be a representation of image, audio, graphical data. Naive users means us who are actually using the application programs. Means people and public could be the one, right? Or it could be the end user who is actually using that software. Like in the bank also, the person sitting at the window side is only knowing how to transfer money from one account to another. So he will be asked only the amount to be transferred, the name of or the account number from which to be transferred, and account number to which transferred. So from and to account numbers and the amount. So these many things will be appeared on certain software, and he will be clicking some buttons. So only that much information he knows, and no more than that. The user or the public also, they only know how to enter the train number and click on check the PNR status, and that's it. So we are the new users. Okay. In the database user, one more user is there, that is database administrator, but it is kept separately because he is having overall main control, and he is having many more duties, many more deeper knowledge of the database system. That's why this topic is kept separate. Administrator मतलब वो जिसके पास पूरा central control है database system का. He can manage the data. He can manage the programs which are used to access that data from the database management systems. Okay, and administrator will be performing some regular duties like maintenance of the data, backing up the data, then checking whether there is enough disk space or not, then monitoring the applications also. If the database management system is getting slower, then updations of the tools or using newer techniques, database structuring, how it is going to be stored, the schema definition, and the physical organization. So all the basic controls along with the authorization rights also, who can access what data and when to grant the accesses, and he can also revoke the access given to the particular user if they are getting misused or violated. ठीक है, तो अगर कोई मिसयूज कर रहा है तो वो उसी वक्त वो रिवोक भी कर सकता है दिए हुए एक्सेस या राइट्स, या फिर उन्हें ग्रांट भी कर सकता है. सो एवरी कंट्रोल we can say the administrator, this person will be responsible for. Okay, so DBA in short we call him, that is database administrator. Okay. Then we will move on to the database architecture. So this is the next topic. Architecture मतलब इसमें हम देखेंगे कि basically what system the complete DBMS stands on. Okay, and what components basically are working to make it generate the final outputs. So this is, you can see overall the system architecture. So basically 4 types. It could be centralized. Centralized मतलब एक ही जगह पे same location पे आपका वही database server है, और sorry server नहीं, वहीं पे आपकी database management system है in the computer, and there are the systems whose data is getting managed, okay, at the same location. That could be a centralized. Then client server means the physically distributed, right? There are clients at the remote locations. The client machines मतलब जो request send करती है या query send करती है, और सर्वर साइड पे मतलब आपका डेटाबेस जहाँ पे एक्चुअली रिटेन किया हुआ है, और यहाँ पे वो क्वेरी फायर होगी, एंड देन द output will be generated or the data will be generated as per the query fired by the user. मतलब जो डेटा चाहिए वो client system ask करेगी और server system मतलब उसे serve करेगी with the data being provided asked by the user, asked by the client system. Then parallel means there will be multiple processors who is managing that database system and multiple disks over which the database is stored. Okay. So that could be the third, we can call it the third database architecture, and distributed. Okay, so at the one database management system could be distributed and managed by the several admins, and then it will be worked out to be manage the data and provide access to that data. Okay, so this could be the 4 possible architectures for database. In the client server architecture, we can have 2 different types, 2-tier and 3-tier architecture. Okay, you can draw this diagram. So this one, as you can see here, the 2-tier architecture, and this is a 3-tier architecture, which is a subtype of client server architecture. The second announcement. Okay, this is. So in a 2-tier architecture, okay, as you know, the client मतलब जो हम लोग घर पे आप डेस्कटॉप सिस्टम यूज करते हैं या अपना लैपटॉप यूज करते हैं, मतलब आपका क्लाइंट मशीन हुआ, और सर्वर साइड मतलब जैसे आप गूगल के सर्वर्स एक्सेस कर रहे हो, so there all the data is stored and you are accessing them. So the remote location जहाँ पे actual data आपका stored है, so that is the server side. It will be serving your request. So client is any application that will be firing the request to the server side, right? So आपके system में client कौन है? Client मतलब you go to the web browser, right? Instead of using some application program, let us take the example of suppose here, as you can see here, in a 2-tier architecture, at the user side, the application programs component is available, okay, which will be receiving the queries from here, and then over the network, okay, these queries will be passed to the server side database system, and then they will be evaluated, and the data will be, or the output will be returned to the client side. Okay, so in the two-tier architecture, उसमें क्या होता है कि यूजर साइड में, मतलब क्लाइंट साइड में ही एप्लीकेशन प्रोग्राम रहता है, जो यहाँ पे क्या करेगा, क्वेरी जनरेट करेगा और सिस्टम कॉल्स प्लेस करेगा, ओके, टू दिस डेटाबेस सिस्टम. But in case of the three-tier architecture, there is application client and application server. At the client side, there is application client, and at the server side, there is application server. Now, what is this responsible for? So here, it is basically used in the World Wide Web plus in the distributed or large scale of applications, business applications में ये use होता है three tier. और ये इसलिए यूज होता है क्योंकि इसमें डिसीजन लेना पड़ता है कि व्हाट टू डू एट व्हाट कंडीशन, ओके, एंड दैट विल बी डिसाइडेड बाय द सर्वर साइड. ओके, सो ऑल द लॉजिक टू टेक सम एक्शन at what condition, what should be done. Okay, so it is kind of a conditional cases. So what should be done if some situation occurs or this particular situation occurs? So that decisions or that logic is implemented in this application server side, and so then it will be a system calls. Okay, so instead of distributing this logic at the multiple client sides, what it has been done, it is being implemented here only at the server side. Okay, and that's why it is a three-tier architecture. So your call goes actually not directly to the database system from user side, but from the application client, it goes to the application server, then some logic is implied, and then it actually places the system calls. Okay. So at the server side, we can see it is again partitioned into two components. Understood? So two-tier architecture, user application program directly places the database system calls and execute the query. In the three-tier architecture, the client application program, like your web browser, application program मतलब जिससे आप interact कर रहे हो from the server side with the server side. तो ऐसा कौन सा program है आपके इसमें? Browser. You open the Chrome browser, you enter the website, right? So that is the interface that through which you interact with the Google server. So web browser मतलब एक client program हुआ, and it directly does not calls or places the database system calls, but it goes here, your query will go here to the application server, which will be having the conditional logic to take the action in a particular situation, and then the database system will be into action. Okay, or some execution will happen, or database system में data access place होगा, and it will be returned to the client. क्योंकि जैसे आप फॉर्म भरते हो या फिर कोई एक सेशन चलता है, or what you are asking, so on the maybe on YouTube or Google or Gmail login, तो आपका वैलिड डेटा है या नहीं है. जैसे आपने वेब ब्राउजर से एंटर किया, जीमेल में लॉगिन, ओके, यूजर नेम और पासवर्ड डाला है, आपने रिक्वेस्ट सेंड की, बट व्हाट हैपेंस, योर यूजर नेम इज इनवैलिड. So application server will take that decision that this is an invalid username, and please re-enter. So decisions will be taken on base of the conditions, what has occurred, and then the action will be taken. So that's why there is a three-tier architecture basically used in the websites. And this is the overall system architecture. You can see here. ये आपको दिख रहा है क्या? Is it visible to you? Yes or no? Yes. Please zoom out on your mobile screen. It's not visible. Yes or no? Bola.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it is visible.
Okay. Or those who are facing problem, just zoom out your mobile screen or the laptop screen. Okay. Mute your mic. Okay, this is overall system structure. If I want to simplify it, I can tell you that this upper structure is actually representing the view level. Okay, various users are given here which can interact with the database. Okay, this complete dashed rectangle boxes are actually representing the logical level, and this one is representing the physical level. Okay, so what structure we have already learned, it is much more uh, detailed and explained in detail here or shown diagrammatically. Okay, so this is the basic. अगर मुझे उसको partitions करना है, so it is like this. Now let's go into the details. So view level पे आप देख सकते हैं यहाँ पे. So what is inside there? So here there are the 4 users that we have just seen the types: the naive users, application programmers, sophisticated users, and database administrator. And here you can use their rights along with related to the DBMS, means the data, what they can do with this data. So obviously the naive users can use the data. Application programmers will be writing, okay, inside the DBMS. So they will be writing the program. So that's why they are having this kind of right, this kind of authorization. Then sophisticated users are also going to use, and admin is also going to use the database management systems. So for naive users, there will be designed the application interfaces, okay, and for application programmers, they will be writing the application programs. Sophisticated users will be using the query tools, and database administrator will be using the administration tools. Okay, so basically through the administration tools, with the use of them, they can control the overall system. Then here we have to now entered inside the logical. So all the application programs, the interfaces, the query tools, and administrative tools, they're decoded inside the query processor. So this, the first dash box you can see here, the query processor. Query processor consists of the compiler and linker for the application programs, which will be generating the application program object code, and which will be processed by the evaluation engine. Query evaluation engine, which is actually responsible for giving the output, taking the input and giving the output. Okay, the ultimate engine, which is important for execution of any query fired over the database. So almost everything you can see here inside the query processor will be going from the query evaluation engine. Okay, will pass by the query evaluation engine. Then there is administrator tools. Admin obviously will be dealing with the data definition language, and the sophisticated users who is responsible for manipulating the data or designing queries will be dealing with the or designing the DML queries, that is data manipulation queries, which will be go into compiler and organizer, and again it will be entered into the query evaluation engine, which is ultimately responsible for processing each query. Now, let us enter the next rectangular box, which is actually representing the storage manager. So, storage manager consists of 4 components, among which there is a buffer manager, file manager, authorization and integrity manager, and transaction manager. Okay, so buffer manager, buffer means the temporary storage of data. So at a point of time, how much data to be stored, what data to be stored, how it will be accessed. Okay, so that decisions should be managed by the particular system. For this, we are having the buffer manager system. Okay, so everything related to the buffer will be managed out by the buffer manager. Then there is a file manager. File manager will be responsible for the data stored inside the tables, how it will be accessed, what data will be stored, which tables are now being used, and how they will be going to be, which operations are currently being performed on them. So as per their requirement, the data to be accessed, their overall control will be managed by the file manager. Okay. And then authorization and integrity manager. As you can see, all these managers are linked with the query evaluation engine. Okay, so they process along with these. Okay, like hand in hand. So there is authorization and integrity manager which will be checking the rights and authorization if the particular query is submitted. तो whether इसके लिए वो rights है या नहीं है वो checks होने चाहिए. तो system ने या admin ने उसे वो rights दिए हैं या नहीं है, ये query valid है या नहीं है. तो ये सारा ऑथराइजेशन यहाँ पे चेक होगा, तो इसका मैनेजर यहाँ होगा. प्लस अगर कोई रूल वायलेट हो रहा है, जैसे मोबाइल नंबर में डिजिट एंटर करने हैं और अल्फाबेट्स एंटर हो रहे हैं, so such integrity constraints will also be taken care of by this manager, authorization and integrity. Okay, the transaction manager, which is the, what we can say, the heart of the DBMS. Okay, because everything depends on the transaction manager, because it is a collection of the operations that will perform single logical function. So it will be checking all the properties of the particular, I mean, like ACID properties for a particular transaction or particular operation to be done. Okay, कोई भी अगर आप ऑपरेशन स्टार्ट कर रहे हो डेटाबेस मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम के साथ, तो वो शुरू से एंड तक okay, उसकी properties and what if the system fails and what if the concurrent accesses are occurring over that operation. So everything will be managed by the transaction manager. Okay, so transaction manager mainly responsible for, क्योंकि देखिए हमारा जो डेटा है वो persistent है, मतलब हमें ये डेटा मेंटेन करना है. ठीक है, जो आप नॉर्मली प्रोग्राम लिखते हो, जैसे आपने C++ लैंग्वेज में लिखते हो, प्रोग्राम की लाइफ बहुत कम होती है. You write the program, you execute the program, and then the data is generated inside the system, right? लेकिन डेटाबेस में ये नहीं है. डेटाबेस में ऑलरेडी डेटा स्टोर्ड है और उस पर हम प्रोग्राम कर रहे हैं परफॉर्म. सो इसमें डेटा परसिस्टेंट होना चाहिए. अगर आपके नॉर्मल प्रोग्राम जो आप एग्जीक्यूट कर रहे हैं, एक छोटा सा C++ का प्रोग्राम, उसमें सिस्टम फेलियर हुआ, डजंट मैटर. बट एक ह्यूज डेटाबेस जो हमेशा कंसिस्टेंट होना चाहिए, जिसकी बिफोर एंड आफ्टर चेंजेस कंसिस्टेंसी डिस्टर्ब नहीं होनी चाहिए, ऐसे डेटाबेस पे कंटिन्यूअसली एप्लीकेशन प्रोग्राम्स वर्क करते हैं. तो आप सोचिए कि अगर ऐसी केस में सिस्टम फेल होता है तो रिकवरी कितनी इंपॉर्टेंट है. Because if there is an Indian Railways data and administrator doesn't know who is going to book which bus and which train and which passenger, okay, they doesn't know it. So they don't know, and every second, okay, every second the transactions are going on with that database. So if in such a case the data is not consistent, okay, and your data is changing, your data is not properly managed, then a huge what we can say, um, huge chaos may occur, right? And we don't want this to happen, and hence there should be the recovery system, and that is inside the transaction manager. इसलिए transaction manager हम इसे बोलते हैं कि ये बहुत important component है overall database system का, because without this the database won't exist. एंड सेकेंड जो एक इम्पोर्टेंस है ट्रांजैक्शन मैनेजर का, वो है कॉन्करेंट एक्सेस. अगर दो पर्सन, अगर किसी ट्रेन में एक ही बर्थ अवेलेबल है, ओके, और दो पर्सन एट द सेम टाइम बुकिंग स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, तो ऐसे केस में बुकिंग दोनों की ही नहीं होनी चाहिए, एक की होनी चाहिए और एक का नॉट अवेलेबल आना चाहिए. तो ये जो कॉन्करेंट एक्सेस के साथ होने वाले इश्यूज है, so we must make sure that this should happen without any inconsistency. So these things are also handled by the transaction manager. Okay, so concurrent accesses, the system failures, recoveries, and everything, and the ACID properties like its atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. These are checked and managed by the transaction manager. Understood? And then we can move on to the physical physical level. Okay, so which is actually how your data is stored physically. They store it where data will be stored, actual data in the form of maybe tables. Okay, so but using the various data structure, maybe this is just a logical representation how your data is going to be represented, or we are storing it inside the tables. But actually physically जब disk पे data store होता है, so we need to use some data structure. Then indices में indexing and hashing included है, जो important है और जो use होता है to efficiently store and access the data. Okay, so indexing is important to store the huge amount of data so that access becomes easier for such data. Then data dictionary, as we have already studied, data dictionary maintains the metadata, that is data about data. And then statistical data. Statistical data means if there is some operations or mathematical data involved to store the overall database management system, then it will be stored inside this. Okay, so as you can see, these are basically the three levels only that we have already learned. This is the physical, this is the logical one, and this one is the real level. The various users using the database at different times and in the interacting with it in different ways. So that's why it is a view level. Okay, well, let's start with the next chapter in the same unit, relational model. Okay, in this we will be studying these topics: structure of relational databases, fundamentals of relational algebra operations. Okay. Now, let us start with the, since we are going to study the relational model, let us start with the basic term, that is relation. So what is a relation? Relation matlab table, okay, which is made up of columns and rows. And columns, they correspond to the attributes, and they describe each row, which is being created inside the table. So every row inside this table must have the value for account number, branch name, and balance. So as you can see here, this how many attributes are there of this relation? Kitne attributes are? Yes. How many attributes are present in this relation? Yes. Answer and speak up. Don't drop any messages. Yes, speak up.
3.
How many? Yes, 3. Which are they?
Account number, branch name, balance.
Balance. Okay. How many records are present in this table, in this relation? How many records?
7.
Yes, 7. It shouldn't be a question mark. It should be a statement. Okay. Your answer should be in a statement tone. Yes, 7. Why 7? 7 rows. Okay. Rows are also known as a record, or the other term is tuple. Tuple. Okay. So this is one tuple wherein Account number is having the attribute A101, branch name is having attribute of downtown, and balance attribute is having the value 500. So this is the another tuple. This is third, this is fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Okay. So every relation consists of the multiple records. Okay, and each record will be described by the attributes, which are represented by the column names. Okay. Then let us go into the details of attributes. What is attribute type? So every attribute of the relation is having a name. As in, we have seen in this relation, account number. Okay, the first attribute having certain name, branch name, balance. This is representing actually the account relation. इस relation का नाम क्या है? Account. मतलब इस table का नाम क्या है? Account. जिसमें हम account की information मेंटेन कर रहे हैं. जैसे अकाउंट की इंफॉर्मेशन कैसे मेंटेन होगी? अकाउंट नंबर आएगा और कितना बैलेंस है और ब्रांच नेम कौन सी है. You can have many more fields, but for the simplicity, as an in this example, we have represented only 3 fields. Now, what is domain? So, set of the possible values that a particular attribute can take. Set of possible values that a particular attribute can take is known as a domain of that attribute. Okay? तो जैसे हम बोल सकते हैं कि अकाउंट नंबर का डोमेन क्या हुआ? अल्फा न्यूमेरिक स्ट्रिंग. As you can see here, the account number is taking the alphabetical values also plus the digits or numbers also, and hence I can say that the domain of the account number is alpha numeric string value. And obviously that will be decided at the time of designing this relation, means using the language of which language? DDL, right? DDL मतलब data definition language में डिजाइन हम किसके हेल्प से करते हैं? DDL. So create table जब आप करोगे तभी आपको सारे types define करने पड़ेंगे. So at that time we will be mentioning these things. So account number जो attribute है, it can take up the alphanumeric string type values only. So this is a domain of the account number attribute. Similarly, branch name का आप बता सकते हो domain क्या होगा? What is the domain of branch name? For second attribute, what is the domain? Set of possible values for a attribute is known as domain. What is the domain of branch name? Answer. Yes. See students, you must interact and answer. Let's not waste the time. Just answer the simple question. What is the domain of branch name? If I've told you alphanumeric string is going to be the domain of account number attribute, then what is the domain of branch name attribute? Yes, but just by looking at these values, can't you tell me the domain? Okay, what is the domain for balance? Third attribute? Yes, speak up. So let's not waste the time. So branch name is having the alphanumeric string as its domain. मतलब इसमें सिर्फ alphabets use हुए हैं. So its domain is alphabetical values. Then balance में आप सिर्फ numeric digits ही use कर सकते हैं. So numerical string is the domain of the balance attribute. तो उसमें particular attribute को आप कौन सी value assign कर सकते हैं? So such set of all such possible values is known as the domain of that particular attribute. तो बैलेंस के लिए डोमेन हुआ डिजिट, क्योंकि बैलेंस हम नंबर्स में ही शो करेंगे. ब्रांच नेम के लिए डोमेन हुआ कैरेक्टर और अल्फाबेट्स. because it could be the possible combination of char only. And account number alphanumeric. Okay. Then the second term that you must know about the attribute is attribute values are required to be atomic. Okay, so what is the meaning of atomic? Atomic means that it's indivisible. They can't be partitioned into much more. Okay, or into subsets. So indivisible मतलब जैसे अगर डेट ऑफ बर्थ है तो डेट ऑफ बर्थ मतलब उसमें डेट मंथ प्लस ईयर ऑफ बर्थ आना ही चाहिए. सो इट इज अ सिंगल स्ट्रक्चर that should be maintained that should be mentioned as a type. Okay, so date is a type. Date is one data type. तो जब भी किसी की डेट ऑफ बर्थ आप एंटर कर रहे हो तो सिर्फ मंथ एंटर नहीं करोगे, सिर्फ ईयर ऑफ बर्थ एंटर नहीं करोगे, या सिर्फ डेट ऑफ बर्थ एंटर नहीं करोगे. तो इट शुड बी अ कंपोजिट स्ट्रक्चर दैट इज डेट मंथ एंड year of birth. Understood? So it should be atomic. So every attribute value should be atomic. It shouldn't be like we are able to partition into much more basic parts. तो एक ही होनी चाहिए, वो कंप्लीट होनी चाहिए. जैसे यहाँ पे हम देख सकते हैं हमारे एग्जांपल में अकाउंट नंबर. तो वैल्यू ऑफ अकाउंट नंबर क्या है? एटॉमिक है, क्योंकि अकाउंट नंबर और उसको हम सब फोल्ड नहीं कर सकते, अनफोल्ड नहीं कर सकते हैं. ठीक है, सो इट शुड बी एटॉमिक. देन डोमेन इज सेड टू बी एटॉमिक इफ ऑल ऑफ इट्स मेंबर्स आर एटॉमिक. Special value null is a member of every domain. Now what is null? We can have a null value or some attributes as having the special value null. तो null का मीनिंग ये नहीं है कि there is nothing. Null का मीनिंग ये है कि it is presently not known. Okay, like suppose if there is in this example, like account number cannot be have the null value, but branch name, maybe we are supposed specifying this as a nullable. Okay, while designing the schema, suppose हम इसे mention कर रहे हैं as a nullable attribute, तो इसका मीनिंग ये है कि ये null value ले सकता है. मतलब अगर किसी अकाउंट नंबर की ब्रांच नहीं है पता, तो आप वहां पे null एंटर कर सकते हो. लेकिन बैलेंस can't be entered as a null. Okay, there has to be some balance above the, I mean, in terms of greater than 0 in the balance value should can't be null. Okay, so इसे हम nullable कभी स्पेसिफाई नहीं करेंगे, लेकिन हम ब्रांच नेम को nullable स्पेसिफाई कर सकते हैं, because it may be the case that if some person's account number you are knowing, is balance you are knowing, but you don't know where the exact branch is. So just assume this. Okay, this shouldn't be happening in the real world, but just assume कि ऐसा अगर हो सकता है तो हम ऐसी फील्ड को nullable कर सकते हैं. तो nullable होना मतलब उस एट्रीब्यूट की वैल्यू कहीं नल हो सकती है, और नल का मीनिंग होता है प्रेजेंटली नॉट नोन. ओके, प्रेजेंटली नॉट नोन, and hence it is treated as a special value. And but null value will be responsible for creating many more complications in the definition of operations. So we will learn it later onwards in the course of time. Let us focus on the relational schema. Okay, time is here. So we will start the relational schema in the next lecture, because maybe क्योंकि ये सब चीजें साथ में पढ़ने की, schema, instance, and then the next topic. So don't want to break the sequence, so we will start this in the next next lecture. Okay. And please, students, answer the questions. Interact. Do interact. You may leave the meet. Mark your attendance. Okay, I have not created that. Just wait. I will post the attendance in a minute. Just wait. Or you may leave the meet and Then you can mark the attendance after receiving the notification. And you don't have to comment here. Students, don't comment here. Why do you comment as present? Just mark here present. I don't want your comments.